What's up, guys? It's Kara here, and I'm back for another episode of Dietitian Talk in my computer room. Want you guys to let me know below where you like to see these videos best in my house. Keep changing it up, so you tell me where you like to watch me. Today's topic, I'm going to talk about tracking your macros. I've been looking through a lot of your questions that you guys asked me on your page for video requests, and I've gotten asked this a couple times to discuss how to go about tracking macros. Now, for some of you out there who have been doing this for a while now, you may be like, well, that's so simple. Why are you doing a video on this? But remember, for my channel, I really hope to reach out to a lot of people out there that maybe aren't in the fitness industry, maybe aren't in the bodybuilding world, and have no clue where to begin. So I want this video to be kind of a basic beginner guide on tracking macros, as well as I'm going to give you some tips on how to hit your macros like a pro, because I get this question quite a bit. How do I hit them? It's really difficult. I'm always over on fat, but I'm under on protein. How do I hit it with not going over on the other? So I'll include discussing that a little bit as well. So to begin with, for most people, what I recommend doing, because it'll make your life easier, is downloading some type of app on your phone, such as MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal kind of pisses me off on my phone because it freezes on me on occasion, but it is a pretty good app. And I know there's plenty of other free trackers that you could download on your smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, a lot of these apps are also websites. Like I've got MyFitnessPal pulled up right here. You can do it all on the computer, whatever works best for you. I find doing it on my smartphone is easiest because in 2015, who doesn't always have their phone with them at all times, right? You kind of feel like something's missing from your life if you don't have your cell phone by your side. So it's very easy if you have it on your phone. There's really no excuse to be able to track your macros, to put it, things in there as the day's going along. But if not, again, you could do it on the computer. Old school style, dietitians have been recommending this for years, is just journaling it. So if you're someone that's you're old school, you like to do things pen and paper in a journal, write things down, then do it that way as well. But the nice advantage of doing it in a program is that it calculates everything for you. So I remember years and years ago when I used to track in my little journal, I would look every food up, 4 ounces of strawberry, how much calories is it? And I'd have to look it up and I'd write it down. So things are much more simplified now with technology. Highly recommend first and foremost doing one of those programs. They're very simple to use, so don't be scared if you've never used it before. What it'll typically ask you, at least for MyFitnessPal, is to set up all your goals, your height, your weight, your age, your activity level, and all that good jazz. And I did that when I set up MyFitnessPal, but what I'll tell you is I didn't actually follow those guidelines because I had set macros I was following for my competition. But if you're a beginner and just starting out, this is one way to get an idea of maybe where you need to start with your macros in order to lose weight. So what you're going to do is enter in all the information it asks of you, and then it'll typically ask if you're trying to maintain, lose, and if you're trying to lose weight, how aggressive are you trying to lose weight. And what the program will do is basically customize it for where you need to be, hopefully, to lose some weight. Again, it's not an exact science, it's just a program. It's no different than if you hire me as your coach. When I estimate your macros, we're kind of shooting in the dark a little bit at first because there's so much more that goes into losing weight, maintaining weight, gaining weight than just plugging in the numbers. So just to understand that process and be patient with it, because what I would suggest you do is whatever you start out with, do it consistently for at least a week or two to kind of get an idea of what your weight is doing. And that'll best give you a guide on kind of how to move. Do I need to cut things back? Maybe I need to eat more. It really just depends. So utilize that program to kind of get your starting point set up. Or if you have a coach who's telling you how many macros to consume, maybe I'm your coach and I'm telling you how many macros to consume. Just ignore the numbers it's telling you to eat in MyFitnessPal. I think mine tells me to eat like however many calories, carbs, protein, fat, etc. And I really just ignore that number because I do my macros separately. So again, depending on your situation, move forward with that. So in terms of actually tracking your macros, how do you go about doing that? Well, you can kind of skin a cat a bunch of different ways, but the one basic tip is obviously enter everything you're consuming. Whether you're going over your macros or under your macros, or you feel like you fucked up and, overate, enter it in your program, okay? It holds you accountable. You can actually see what you did during the day. You can see how it ends up at the end of the day. And if you weigh yourself the next day or maybe at the end of the week, or how frequently you do your measurements, it'll still give you good information to know how your body responds. So I advise you to be consistent with this process, and that can be challenging because a lot of people, when they fuck up with their diet, don't want to be honest with themselves. It can be very difficult. I've been like this before too, where if you feel like you've screwed up your day, well, screw it, I'm just not going to track anymore today. I'll just start over new tomorrow. Don't have that mindset, because what that's going to lead you to is eating like a ravenous beast the rest of the day because you're not tracking it. It's like, woohoo, you go wild and you just get way off track, and that can really screw up your whole week. Maybe you feel like I only screwed up one day. It can really, really set you back. So what I advise you doing is, maybe you ate the peanut butter cups that you didn't plan on eating or whatever it may be, put it in MyFitnessPal. Because maybe seeing it in there and seeing where you're at for the day will kind of help you refocus for the rest of the day and go, you know what? I shouldn't have ate that, but tonight for dinner, I'm going to eat a salad with some lean meat, and I'm going to drink a big thing of water and feel better about how I'm ending my day. And I think that's where a lot of people fail to do that with tracking macros. So definitely track everything regardless of how you're doing throughout the day. One thing you're going to need for tracking macros that maybe you don't already have is a digital scale. You can pick those up pretty cheap at like a Walmart or Target, Bed Bath & Beyond, any of those places. So you're going to want to track in order to kind of be more precise with what you're eating and to be able to put it into the program and know how much of it. You can always eyeball stuff, but again, if you're trying to really lose weight and crack down on your diet, you need that precision. So that can be a very useful tool for you. Depending on what you do during your workday or when you're out and about, you have a couple options there. You can either bring a digital scale with you. You could keep one at work. You could bring it with you while you're traveling. It can be fairly inconvenient to do it that way. But again, it just really depends where you're at with your goals and how serious you are and how, strict you want to be. If not, there's always pre-planning, and that's where some people kind of fall off too, is planning ahead of time for your week. So if you take one day out of the week or maybe 2 days out of the week to prep your food, portion it out ahead of time, that container has 4 ounces of chicken in it and a full cup of broccoli. It takes a little more time, but you can plan it out that way so you know exactly how much you're bringing with you when you go places. And as soon as you start doing that, it can take a little bit to get into the flow if you're a beginner with all this, with the planning of meals. But you'll get the hang of it, and it'll make your life a ton easier if you're prepared with your food and you know how much it is. One thing I like doing that helps me sometimes when I'm in prep is actually planning out my meals the day ahead of time. So I like to kind of plug things in the day before, what I'm going to eat the next day, and try to play around with the macros. So if I eat oatmeal and eggs, and then this meal I eat meatballs and pasta, and then for dinner I eat salad and tuna fish and whatever else, and you kind of play around with what foods will work best into your macronutrients for the day. The great thing about flexible dieting and tracking your macros is that most foods aren't off limits. But what I'll tell you is, though, if you fill your macros with healthier foods, which is what I'm going to recommend you do, you can eat a lot more throughout the day. So 1,500 calories can go super far when you're eating healthy, more whole foods versus if you're going out to eat at Burger King or even Subway. That shit adds up quick. So I recommend you do play around ahead of time to see, what you can fit in the day. And for me, this kind of becomes like a fun little challenge when I'm in prep, especially when my calories start getting lower. It's like, all right, how can I make 80 carbs go as far as possible throughout the day so I don't feel like I'm not eating all day long? So have fun with it. It's going to be tough, but take that challenge and have a little fun with it like it's a game, and just see how you can fill up your day's worth of food. So that can be super helpful if you sit down and try to plan things out the night before, plug it in your program the night before, the day before, and see where you're adding up in terms of your macros at the end of the day. And in terms of meeting those macros, if you find out like it's the end of the night and you have all this fat left, but you have no carbs and no protein left, what do I do? Well, you're going to want to get some source of only fat, right? So things you can do that I do during prep are I add in some type of oil into my diet. So I might add in some coconut oil or some olive oil to maybe my last meal. I normally cook my protein on the stovetop with like a nonstick Pam spray, but if I know I've got like 5 or 10 grams of fat left, I might just use a source of oil. A healthier oil, that way it's not bad for you. You could do extra virgin olive oil, something like that, to add into your macros. That way you're not just going under. Especially if you're working with a coach, they're expecting that you're hitting your macros to a T or pretty darn close. So if you're going under all the time or you're going over all the time, your coach or whoever you're working with isn't going to have a good idea how to adjust things if you're not doing exactly what they're telling you to do. So in terms of fat, I find that to be the easiest way, because if you eat any kind of nuts or nut butter, which are my favorite, but you're going to get in some protein and some carbs with it. So that option's out. So I do recommend having some type of oil on hand. MCT oil is very helpful. I have a separate video on MCT oil if you want to check it out with the benefits of it. That's another thing to have on hand to just fill fat macros at the end of the day. You don't want to be going under on fat. You might think, well, going under is better, right? No, don't do that. You want to hit all your macronutrient goals, not only because your coach wants you to be hitting them, but because they're set that at that point for a reason. So lower is not always better. It can sometimes hinder your progress, especially with fat. You need fat to absorb fat-soluble vitamins. You need it for your body to be functioning well in so many different ways. So hit those fat macros like you should be. And in terms of carbohydrates and hitting those, I usually recommend, if you're done on protein and fat and you need straight up carbs, best thing you can do is maybe eat some fruit. I mean, there's a lot of carbs that are, fat-free with no protein, but I would say eat some fruit. That's pretty much any fruit you're going to pick up is going to give you some micronutrients, a little bit of fiber, and it won't take you over on your carb and fat goals. And in terms of protein, if you need just straight up protein, I think that one's a little bit easier, but I do get a lot of people that tell me they struggle to hit their protein goals. If you're not used to eating protein and you're kind of getting into the bodybuilding world, that can be challenging because usually protein needs are set a little bit higher if you're someone trying to gain muscle mass. But in general, I highly recommend having some type of whey protein on hand. You guys know I use MTS Nutrition Whey. I highly recommend that. Having that on backup is crucial because sometimes you just don't want to eat that much meat throughout the day, or even if you're vegetarian, it can be challenging to hit your protein goals. So that's when having a supplement on hand can be helpful because you could just take a 1 scoop protein shake and you're good to go. The other challenge some people have, especially males, is if they're trying to make gains, they're full. It's hard to eat enough to make gains sometimes for people. Not everyone has an appetite of a beast like I do. So in terms of hitting your goals when you're full, we don't think about that a lot, but that can be just as challenging. So sometimes having things on hand like a protein shake, they're not going to fill you up as much as if you sit down and eat a 4-ounce piece of steak. So you also want to have those different options available too, depending on, how you feel. And And also, whey protein just travels nicely. So if you're someone that's on the go, traveling to work, you're commuting a lot, I keep a tub of MTS whey right in my back seat because I never have any excuses. I can never allow myself to go too long without eating anything because I'm always one scoop away from protein. It's right in my car. I have no excuses when I keep it on hand. So that's another tip for you with tracking macros is you gotta cut out the excuses. And we can all make them, and it doesn't matter where we're at in our lives, but depending on how badly you want this and you want to get your diet on track and you want to feel better about what you're doing, you do need to plan and prepare and have things with you. And maybe it's not ideal, but I'm that girl that walks around with tuna fish packets in my purse and whey protein in the back of my car and rice cakes. I just stash food wherever I go because you guys know what it's like to get to that point of your day when you're just so hungry. You've been so busy at work, you've been so busy cleaning, whatever, and you just don't care anymore about what type of food choice you make. So you're like, screw it. Typically in those times we want something that's just extremely satisfying and filling, and that ends up being a bunch of junk or fast food. So be prepared and just always have some staple things on hand to help you meet your macronutrient goals and to meet them in a way that's going to best fuel your body and leave you feeling good at the end of the day. In terms of what do I need to track, what don't I need to track? This is another question I get asked quite a bit. So one thing I will tell you, you can make it very simple on yourself and just track everything. Track every morsel of food you put into your mouth, and that will give you the best idea of what you're consuming and how that's impacting your body, your weight, and all that stuff. But I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you I track every morsel of what goes into my mouth because I don't. There are things that I get asked about, like branched chain amino acids. I don't track those. Certain beverages, something like this, that's like a 0-calorie drink, I don't track it. What else don't I track? Some people don't track coffee creamer. I guess it depends where you're at. When I'm in prep, I track coffee creamer. When I'm not in prep, I don't track coffee creamer. It's like my treat to myself, not tracking it or something. But what I would tell you is if you're going to track something, track it consistently. If you're not going to track it, don't track it consistently. Don't just one day track coffee creamer and the next day don't. Whatever you're doing, just do it consistently. It'll give you an easier handle on what you're doing. Trying to think what else tracking. I don't typically track spray butter. Certain condiments, again, it's a little bit different for me when I'm in prep. I do tend to track things a little more closely. When I use my reduced sugar ketchup, I've measured it before, so I know about how much I use, and it ends up being like a carb. I'm gonna be real. I don't track it. I don't track my mustard. Certain things like that, I don't personally track. But depending on you guys and where you're at, I leave it up to you. But things that are, a significant source of calories, you're going to want to track. So that's where with some of the condiments and things like that don't have much in them, I tend to not track. And then for me, when I'm getting real close to my competition, I'm just more mindful of how much I'm consuming of those items, or I may cut certain things out completely just to tighten things up that much more. So again, that's really up to you. Energy drinks, take a look at the nutritionals. Some energy drinks, even if they're sugar-free, they still have 5-6 carbs in them. Maybe that doesn't make a difference for you, but it may make a difference in someone's body when you're a petite little person like me. So 5-6 carbs, if I'm prepping or getting ready for a show, can make a difference. And if you're drinking 2 or 3 of those a day, think about it. There's, a considerable amount of carbs that are going to be adding up. People ask me quite commonly if you track gum. I never track gum. I think that's just crazy. But no, track whatever you want, but do it consistently or not consistently. Okay, and just make it simple on yourself. I promise it will feel overwhelming at first if you've never tracked before, but what I do promise you is it'll get easier as time goes on. So be patient with the process, be consistent with the process, and give it time. Give it time and you will see results, and you'll have a better handle on what you're doing and what things you need to change. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. I just freeballed this video for you guys. hopefully it gave you some good tips and ideas for those of you that are just starting out, or maybe those of you that have been doing it for years. Maybe I kind of helped lead you in a better direction. So if you find this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up so I know you liked it. Share it with others that you think may benefit from this information, and comment below if you have any tips for tracking and making it easier for others. I always like it when you guys share your ideas below. Sometimes it really helps me out as well. So we'll see you in the next one. Dietitian talk. We are in the month of October now, one of my favorite months, by the way. But we are coming into the colder season, at least for New York. And for many people, the off season, whether you're a bodybuilder doing competitions or not, a lot of people choose to change their diet this time of year. And I wanted to talk a bit about bulking, and more specifically doing, I guess, what they call a lean bulk. And